It's been a phenomenal last 15 months for Indian cricket since October 2021 when two new franchises went on sale. Last year we saw the sale of IPL broadcast rights across television and digital which created history, and then very recently the forming of the Women's Premier League and the sale of franchisees. All of that has put Indian cricket on a global roadmap, and it continues to be so. Today we have with us Mr. Vinit Karnik, Head of Sports, Esports and Entertainment at GroupM, South Asia. Welcome, Vinit. Uh,
Thanks, Srini, for having me on the show.
yeah, there's so much to talk to you about. There's so much to talk to you about, so many developments that have happened in Indian cricket. Obviously, few people in the industry follow it as closely as you do. Second, and the more important bit is how there is a digital revolution at the back of it all, which is kind of, not just fueling every move that we are watching, we're witnessing, but it's also giving us a glimpse into what the future can be like. So
Sure.
yes, we have a lot to talk to Vinith about, and why not? Let's start on with broadcast, because I think broadcast rights in IPL have been the biggest talking point ever since it happened last year, right? Vinith, like the sale of broadcast rights in IPL, the trend story of the decade.
Absolutely, absolutely. For cricket, it's the biggest trend story, and I think the world of cricket is looking at India from a very, very different way, because if you look at it from and you talked about the revolution in terms of digital, I think it's the media rights in IPL are very clearly the reflection of the changing habits and the changing lifestyle of people in India. With the entire mobile internet penetration increasing to the perhaps the highest in the world, one of the highest in the world, I think this is not surprising, because today you travel through the India, through the rural area, you will not find many things, but you will definitely find the internet connection there, right? And that's definitely a reflection. So we all were surprised when Star picked up the last right cycle at 16,400 crores, and now between Star and between Disney and Viacom picking up to close to about 48,000 crores. That is something which is very, very good and encouraging for IPL and India cricket in particular.
In a country like India, when we speak about this so-called digital revolution, the story and the narrative goes far beyond cricket, right? I mean, cricket looks like cricket is only a catalyst. Probably, given the way the sport sells in this country, probably the chief catalyst in telling the digital India narrative. But your thoughts on what exactly is this story weaving, or going on to become? Because this stretches far beyond cricket. And I remember having these lovely conversations with you where we have spoken about, what could be the potential growth from a digital standpoint. So if you could throw us a picture on these lines.
See, today the exposure for an average Indian is no more about India. It's a global exposure, right? So today, look at football, but in particular as a sport. So Indians follow European football more than Indian football.
Right.
Now, one way to look at it is, why do we follow European football? The other way to look at it is that we follow the best football in the world, and therefore when Indian football comes into play, the same translate to India, and slowly the affinity from a fan point of view will at some point in time come to India as well, because obviously when Indian football starts becoming better from a sheer play point of view, people will start watching Indian football. Now, what we need to also realize outside of sport is India is a highest producer of content in the world. Whether that content is entertainment content, GC content, or sports content doesn't matter. While we're talking about cricket today, don't forget we have got 10 plus leagues across 365 days being played in India. Now, which means there is huge amount of content to be consumed. Now, when you talk about digital revolution and the ease of watching that content through a streaming platform, that brings in a lot of affinity to the younger India. And also remember, I think 27% of India is less than 30 years of age,
Right.
which means India is a young country, which also means India as a country would want to watch new things, want to watch things which possibly are global pop culture.
Right.
And sports obviously rules the roost. And we know worldwide
Right.
the youngsters first get hooked on to sports and then other pieces of content. And India is no different.
So basically, I've always said this, that if you're manufacturing a pen anywhere in the world, and if you're not selling that pen in India or China, you are technically not in global business. And the
Absolutely.
same goes for content.
Absolutely.
So in that, from a cricketing standpoint, again, I just like to go back to that one point where, there is so much of consumption that we are talking about in terms of, various sports. You talked about entertainment. Esports are, it's a completely new world
New world,
that is waiting
absolutely.
to come to this country. So while we're talking about all of that, let's again focus on cricket, because cricket at the end of the day, as of today, is the chief driving force.
Without a doubt.
So what is the trend? What is the trend from a cricketing standpoint when you're looking at a digital revolution? And when we are looking at, when I speak about a digital revolution, I want to right now focus on, let's to start with, the broadcast narrative. With cricket as the chief catalyst, any trend that you're picking, anything
See, this
comes
is
to
the
mind?
first right cycle, Srini, where we have seen a broadcaster for IPL being different and a streaming platform being different, right? So from a trend perspective, this is definitely going to be a year of discovery in many ways, right? Because till now, we had one broadcaster who used to stream as well. I mean, it was with Star and Hotstar, right? So now you have Disney as a network for TV and Geo as a network for streaming. So it's going to be discovery in more than many ways. See, we have seen a huge amount of, look at FIFA as a case in point, right? Never before we have seen a narrative where more than 100 million people in India watched FIFA live as unique audience. I think if I remember the last numbers in 2019, they were somewhere around 35-40 million. Now 35-40 million going up to 100 plus million itself is a huge trend, right?
Right.
So from that perspective, we would expect to see the reach of cricket definitely going up, the reach of IPL certainly going up in this season. Now, to what extent it goes up, what are the implications of that in terms of consumption and therefore monetization is something which I think is going to be a discovery mode this year.
Vinit, I've always been a strong believer of a line of thought. With recent developments that have happened, I've always felt that until now in broadcast, in the business of broadcast, the business was about you buy the rights, right? But from a sports federation, we're talking about cricket. So in cricket, we buy the rights from BCCI or let's say the ICC. We sell it to the consumer who's consuming the sport at a particular fee, subscription fee or whatever, which is a monthly value or an annual subscription, right? And that is how the broadcaster made up for the spending, right? At a rental business model. And I believed, in the last 2 years that I've been watching, and when we speak of digital revolution, I believed that that narrative is changing. Today, the broadcaster is not buying the rights just to sell it to the consumer. Rather, he's buying the rights, keeping cricket the product as a catalyst to sell every other business. What do you think of this?
So I don't know. I think there are some use cases, but we need to see how things pan out, because today with Geo having the rights of IPL, I think they have lot more potential to push the envelope and look at a very different narrative. And possibly, I would say, and I've been thinking about this point for a while now, and for all you know, India might be one of the trend-setting countries who will possibly show the world in terms of a typical traditional narrative of media rights being acquired and then sold it to the distribution network, and obviously the advertising community can maybe add a couple of more layers to it. Like the obvious layers from a Geo perspective are the data layer,
Right.
and of course the commerce layer. But I think from a 2023 perspective, this could be a trend, but we would see some use cases in the time to come for it to get established business, because make no mistake, TV is not going anywhere in India for at least couple of years from today. We are still a TV audience, and TV, I see a lot of media talking about what's going to happen to TV. TV is definitely here to stay, but what digital will do, it will complement television, and maybe take the content to an audience where television has not reached. That possibly the changing landscape and the trend that we can see.
You said a couple of years. Couple of years, TV is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So beyond a couple of years, it's a doubt.
I mean, the way we are looking at our mobile penetration and the digital penetration, at some point in time we are talking about connected TV as well, right? So this change will happen. So the way we change from terrestrial television to satellite television, obviously things will change. And when I mean TV is not going anywhere, is because connected TV will come into play. So television will also change its course and catch up with some newer innovations on the back of tech. So therefore, I mean, you look at the West today. Television has not gone anywhere. I mean, today you look at Europe, you look at US as mature markets. TV is still pretty much there. So you can't completely ignore TV at this point in time. For some years for now, for definitely.
Right. Okay. See, slightly digressing from what we are talking about, but again, the most important development. Why is this important? Because if until a year ago, or probably even less than a year ago, if somebody would have asked me, what do you think about a T20 league for women in this country? And I would have said, we are a long way off. Okay. I seriously have been telling myself, reminding myself, this is kudos to BCCI for what they have pulled off. What is the immediate thing that comes to mind when we speak of the Women's Premier League? To my mind, I think a phenomenal drive and an achievement.
Without a doubt, and it was quite evident, Srini, in December of 2022 when BCCI actually announced the fee parity, point where our national cricketers will get paid with men's in terms of women and men getting the same fees. Now that was a very clear, part where BCCI was saying that we are here to make it work, and with the announcement of Women's Premier League and the way Viacom as a broadcaster and streaming partner came in to support that from a sheer media rights perspective. The top corporates in the country, 3 of them being current IPL teams, coming in and I mean around 4,600 crores for 5 teams, itself is a very clear testimony that the time is absolutely right for our women. And you saw, I mean, we winning under 19 World Cup a couple of weeks back. So these are great data points to show that women are no different than men. They can play competitive cricket. Having said that, I would still believe for it to become a cult following or a kind of content that is comparable to men's, we are about 2 to 3 years away. I think this again is a year of discovery. A lot of work needs to be done in that area from a marketing standpoint, from a fan engagement standpoint, to create that habit, the way we are habitual to watch men's cricket. You have to create that habit into a community where they follow women's cricket as much as they follow men's. So I think some work needs to be done, but absolute great starting point, no doubt about that.
What kind of brands do you think will want to enter the WPL space? Big ticket FMCG, for example. Does it put the FMCG market back into the picture here?
So I would say that the amount of conversations that we have had in the last 1 month on women's cricket and women's Premier League in particular is absolutely encouraging. Advertisers who have never been a part of mainstream cricket, predominantly the women-centric brands, are wanting to know a lot more. Having said that, I would say the first year is going to be a year of experimentation and year of wait and watch. And maybe from year 2 onwards, we will see a very new set of advertisers coming into play. As I said, it's still early days, great starting point, and I would say well begun is half done. So we have begun very well. We need to sustain a great amount of effort in terms of competitiveness and great marketing for it to yield results in the time to come.
We saw close to $500 million being invested in terms of the 5 franchises, and I remember that conversation, and you were so clear in terms of I remember that conversation we had, and Vinit was telling me, this is what I feel is going to be the number, like when the bids come in for the franchise. And I would like to remind, it's as close as things got. Now, that said, with $500 million that have come in, what do you think is the monetization scenario like? Because if you look at men's cricket, even for them, it took around 8 years, 7 to 8
7 to
years.
8 years, yeah.
I think Kolkata Knight Riders were the first to break even, right? So, how long do you think, and what is the immediate or long run picture that you see in this space for the franchises to start monetizing
So
this?
in my view, I've spoken to the 5 franchises, and they are looking at WPL in a very, very different way. So while men's was all about P&L and profitability at some point in time, women's for the first 10 years is going to be a combination of monetization in terms of P&L, but lot more about unlocking the potential for women from a sporting standpoint. So to me, what WPL will do to the larger sport ecosystem is what I would love to see, because I think the support from corporates will get more women to participate in sports, and not only sport being a men's sport. You look at Olympic movement worldwide. I mean, you have got serious amount of equal participation from both the genders, right? I think India somewhere will get there, and in the early 80s and early 90s, the way we saw parents catching hold of their son's hand and taking them to a cricket ground, to various different coaching centers, I would love to see a similar amount of, involvement with women's. And today we are somewhere seeing that. Okay, you walk the streets of cricket in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Calcutta, you will see much more interest in younger women wanting to learn sport or cricket professionally. So to me, the investments in WPL will eventually lead into a more exposure to women, the more confidence that even women can play sport like men and look at sport as a serious career option. I think that will be a big win. And to me, again, like in terms of IPL, the way BCCI and IPL was the league which actually opened up opportunities for other sports as well, I would somewhere feel that WPL will do a similar thing, not only in terms of cricket, but in other sports,
sports.
including individual sports.
Very true. In fact, recently when India won the Under-19 World Cup, I remember I was on CNBC speaking with one of the guests who happened to be the father of our cricketer Soumya Tiwari, the little girl who,
Yeah.
kind of won the World Cup. And the man, her father, the family is from Bhopal. And I remember the man on television standing and speaking so proudly of what his daughter had accomplished and admitting that probably, some years ago, he actually wasn't very comfortable with the thought that his daughter was like, picking a spot that women hardly played. And today, he thinks that the likes of his daughter are going to start a revolution in this country. And, you just pointed out something so unique now, which brings me to a thing that I've thought about, over the last 6 months. We talk about the IPL being slotted for primetime television at 7:30 in the evening, which is meant for family entertainment. It's gender agnostic, and the fact that men, women, children in the household sit together and consume this property. Beautiful, right? But at the end of the day, it's been a story of 22 men walking out on the field and competing with each other. The WPL changes that. Now you have 22 girls walking out on the
True.
field. So that again needs to be looked at from a completely different space or a completely different mindset. And the fact that what does this also tell you about, yeah, all right, you spoke about how monetizing is not the only story. Fair enough. So then is CSR kind of an approach the more pragmatic way to look at it?
So I won't call it a CSR. I would call it more of a diversity, equality, and inclusiveness,
Right.
which corporates would want to, identify it with. So you have seen Reliance doing a fantastic job with right to education, right? I mean, you have seen Mumbai Indians giving away their one match in one Wankhede every year on year
Yes.
for all the school children,
Education for all.
education for all, right? Now, I would see some initiatives like these coming into play. And again, I would believe India would want to drive that narrative in the world of cricket, because that's a story to be
Right.
told to the world.
Right.
Yeah. So therefore, I mean, I don't know if you got some time to catch up with the match in DY Patil, the first match between India and Australia a couple of months back.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a sold out Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay. I was personally there at the Brabant Stadium
Yeah.
when the match, the result of the series was already known, but I saw about 10 plus thousand people at CCI, right? I think that's a great amount of support that audience would want to, support their team with. And let's see, as I said, 23 is going to be a year of discovery in multiple ways. So WPL also will have to see how fans eventually come out to support their teams in Mumbai. It's going to be all happening in Mumbai this year. And let's see. I mean, would love to see some full houses for some matches.
What do you make of Viacom18's successful media rights bid for WPL? I'll ask you this question in two separate perspectives. One is obviously what do you make of that winning bid of 951 crores, which is for television and digital both. And the other bit is, you can choose to answer this separately, is a lot of people actually talk big, like to talk big about women's cricket, want good things to happen. But when the moment is required, when that moment is happening, very few actually walk the talk, I'll come to the Tatas also. I mean, it's phenomenal. The fact that, by virtue of being sponsoring the title for men's IPL, they thought it's only basic courtesy to extend it to women's IPL too, which, we saw it's a recent development which has happened over the last 48 hours. The Tatas have come on board as the title sponsors of the Women's Premier League. But before I come to the Tatas, the important bit is I need to understand the broadcast rights. What do you think of the 951 crore bid?
I think I'm a firm believer, I've always been a believer that the first sense from a content acquisition which you get is always from a broadcaster or a streaming partner. Because they are the closest to the audience, because they are the custodians of the first party data.
Right.
Okay. The 951 crores which Viacom put very clearly is a very, very well informed decision, because obviously they would have seen the kind of traction they saw for sport, right from FIFA to multiple different ways they would have realized. And I think it's a great move to come and buying the rights, and I think they will do wonders with it, is my sense. So I'm sure they have had, it's a mathematical decision, it's not a decision with emotions only.
In fact, 15 years ago, when the men's IPL was being sold for the first time, when BCCI was marketing it aggressively to the broadcasters, at that time also, if you go to see, the IPL had to be taken on the platter to broadcasters, right?
Correct.
BCCI said that, okay, we are coming out with this product which we'll call the Indian Premier League. Would you like to? At that time also, not every broadcaster was looking at the space very aggressively, right?
Correct.
And then there are so many who later on went on to think that they had missed the bus, despite what was the same for women's cricket today.
Absolutely. Look at it, no? I mean, the first 10 years, Sony had it for what, 1,000 crores a year approximately?
Yeah.
To a 48,000, almost 5,000 crores a year.
15 years later.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the trend, right? I mean, today, if you have looked at approximately, give or take 50 crores, 1,000 crores for a women's Premier League, who knows if things go well in the first 3 seasons, the next right cycle would have a completely different number and a very aggressive bidding that we will see.
True, it's been a fast rising market, and if you compare it to, we like comparisons, and we like to compare the IPL with, global leagues anywhere around the world. So when you look at NFL is a 100 plus, 105-year-old league. It's literally the granddaddy of sports leagues in the world. Then you have the basketball NBA, which is again 75 plus years old. The English Premier League, the revamped version of the English Premier League, which is now around 35 years old. So by that virtue, the IPL is still a teenager, just 15 years of age. And then if you go on to see the distance that it has already traveled, again.
That's an interesting point. I would just like to say something on this one.
Yeah.
Now, 103 years versus a 15-year. And if you actually compare, and you can't actually, it's not an apple-to-apple comparison,
Right.
but if you look at a per match investment on IPL from a broadcast standpoint vis-a-vis an NFL, you will see how comparable it is. And with the journey of 100 years versus 15 years, I think it's a great journey we have traveled. And again, you have to pat on BCCI's back, because BCCI has been very, very bold in supporting India cricket, and they have done a tremendous job coming the distance. And while NFL is predominantly a one sport, one market sport, India is no less. I mean, cricket is no less. I mean, it's 12 markets, and India obviously being the biggest market from a sheer numbers point of view. I think it's a great, commendable job that we as a country have done.
We like to point a finger at BCCI. Every time there is some chota mota controversy, we like to say, "Dekho BCCI." But quite often I realize we fail to give them a pat on the back when it is required. And Vinit is right. Well, it's been a tremendous growth story, not just for cricket in India, but India, as a country, from the lens of a sport that it well and truly loves. Anyways, we'll come back to that another time.
Look at the model, right? I mean, IPL is such a successful model that it has actually given an opportunity for so many cricket playing countries to actually start their own Premier Leagues.
True.
And in little ways, in their own ways, I mean, all of them are doing fairly well, right? I mean, it's actually an opportunity for their talent in respective countries who actually comes up from a grassroots and then eventually plays for their country and then looks forward to an IPL contract.
True. And that said, I have personally also believed that until pre-turn of the century, movies continued to be India's biggest export to the world. And I think post 2007, IPL took over that mantle, and it is today is India's biggest export to the world. Not just the biggest export, probably India's biggest soft power, one of India's greatest soft powers.
True. And while we keep talking about players, we don't consider the support staff.
Right.
I think the commentators, the entire behind the scene, so many opportunities that cricket has given to the talent in India who can actually show the world how it's done in India.
Right.
So I think it's a gem in the crown. I definitely believe so.
So coming back to the WPL, 33 crores per year as title sponsor from Tata's, 165 crores for 5 years. What do you make of that? And kudos to Tata's for again coming forward to back.
Very comparable again, right? DLF paid 40 crores a year in 2008.
Yeah. 5 years, 200 crore.
Absolutely.
This is 35.
Very comparable. So I think the mood from an advertising perspective, from a franchise ownership perspective, is somewhere going back in 2008. Yeah. We only hope that Women's Premier League turns out to be as successful as men and on the growth trajectory the way it was in the first and the second right cycle. And I think whatever I'm aware of in terms of plans that various franchises are doing, and you saw the player auction, okay? Even that's very comparable, right? I mean, it was such a happy moment for our girls and girls worldwide to get the kind of support and the kind of money that was offered through auction. I think the trend continues, and we hope that your first question, that from a monetization standpoint, we hope that the teams will be profitable in the first 10 years.
Right. And also the simple fact that, you talked about things being very comparable. One thing just struck my mind was that when DLF sponsored the IPL, title sponsors of IPL in 2008, we were looking at 60 matches. Right now at 35.
This is 22.
Yeah. And this is 22. So again, that
it's actually
value
more.
Yeah.
If you compare number of matches,
the pro rata value is definitely more.
Pro rata is more.
Right. All right. So from a BCCI standpoint, because we are talking about sponsorships, what do you see the year 2023 like? Because again, every passing year sets a precedent.
Correct.
And sets a benchmark. And I don't think the IPL enjoyed a better year than 2022. Nobody, I think, in this industry would have a better perspective on it than Mr. Vinit Karnik.
Absolutely, Srini. In fact, we are just at the closing stages of our report, which we will launch in March, our yearly report called Sporting Nation. The numbers that we are seeing of 22 are highest ever. It's a bumper year it's been for Indian sports and cricket in particular. Now coming to a question on 23. 2023 is, again, as I say, is going to be a year of discovery, because predominantly from 2008 onwards, we have seen one broadcaster and a streaming platform. It was Sony earlier, Star after that, but now things have changed. Yeah, it's the first time ever we are going to be witnessing a different broadcaster and a different streaming partner, different companies.
Right.
So difficult to predict a trend. It's a year of discovery. Early days, we'll have to see how things pan out in the next 15, 20 days.
Right. Also, the fact that so many things happened for the first time in 2022, because we you played a vital role, your company played a vital role in getting the sponsor for the orange and the purple cap. And if I remember correctly, since Lalit Modi was running IPL, since then the IPL was looking to get a sponsor for the orange and purple caps, and finally it happened for the first time in 15
So
years.
it's not about, okay, the way I would see it is not about orange and purple cap only. It's about advertisers wanting to not miss out on opportunities linked to the Indian Premier League. This year was, orange and purple cap was the only opportunity available. Otherwise, everything was sold out. And we saw the first year where it's been sold to an advertiser, which is absolutely phenomenal, which goes to say that how popular and how important IPL is from a marketing perspective for brands. And we have seen over the years, most advertisers use it as a launch campaign. And we would see that in 23 as well.
Right. All right, Vinit, futuristically speaking, going forward, do you see potential in this line of thought that the growth of IPL, right, or T20 league in India, the business, when I speak of it from a business model perspective, the growth is technically about the central pool of revenue shifting to the local pool of revenue. Is that the trend that IPL is going to pick going forward? I'll just, kind of break this question. So, for example, today you have a Byju's that's there on the Team India jersey. You have brands that vie for that space, right? Kit sponsorship, apparel sponsorship, and Team India sponsorship. Now, until 15 years ago, that was the only space if you wanted visibility, if a brand wanted visibility. Today, you have 10 franchisees, 10 men's franchisees, each a brand in its own right, right? You have a Mumbai Indians, you have a Chennai Super Kings, which are now global properties, right? I mean, big names. So, for a sponsor, for a potential sponsor, there is that much opportunity available in the market to go looking for visibility, right? And going forward, do you think this is an area of constant struggle that BCCI will have to bear in mind, because it has competition from within its own ecosystem? And that's why I asked you, is there a potential in the future for sponsorship space to move from central more towards local?
See, look, there's definitely more supply that's been created, okay? But more supply has been created on the back of increasing demand as well. We haven't seen a single year where the teams have not been able to sell their jersey spots, or we haven't seen a single advertising asset in the BCCI ecosystem which is unsold,
Right.
right? Which means that the rising demand for cricket is increasing. And somewhere down the line, India is a growing market as well. We saw a huge evolution of the way the startups came into the play in the last 10 years. Now, the startup money has dried out, okay? Does not mean that the other side of the traditional advertisers are coming in. The new age advertisers are coming in. So India is always going to be an evolving market, and there is not going to be a dearth of opportunities for the marketeers. And therefore, from a sports standpoint, I think we are just scratching the surface. Okay, we have huge ambitions, Srini. We have ambitions to host the FIFA World Cup. We have ambitions to host Olympics at some stage. Government of India is putting so much thrust on sports. The current union budget has increased the sports budget by 36%. It used to be 2,400 odd crores in 2022. It has gone up to 3,450 crores in 2023. Now, that's the focus Government of India is putting in. So, a great combination going between Government of India, the private players, predominantly the IPL teams, and the Reliance Foundations, the JSW Foundations, the Tata Foundation, the kind of work they are doing in individual sport, Olympic sport, I think it's commendable. So, all that is supply to me.
Right.
And whilst the supply has been created, I have not seen a dearth of demand. There is equal amount of demand and to fulfill that supply. And that's a great news, and that's the reason we are calling ourselves a sporting nation in the making. It's definitely Amrit Kal for India. There is no denying that. And if there is one sector which I believe would grow exponentially in the next 1 decade or so, without a doubt, one of the sectors is sports for sure.
Wow. I mean, when you speak like this, I feel like this conversation should not end. I mean, there is so much to talk about. We will keep, I mean, just remind me that every now and then we need to keep bringing Mr. Vinit Karnik back to our show. But for today, we need to conclude right here and probably catch him again whenever he has the time to talk once again about the amazing space that Indian sport is going on to become. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vinit, for your time.
Thank you, Srini. Absolute pleasure. I think always it's always good to talk to you because the conversations are so rich and free flowing, and you are one of the catalysts for sports and torch bearers. So, an absolute pleasure for having me on the show.
Pleasure is mine too. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.